Happy Friday, everybody. So I realized that I talked about something in the subreddit, and I don't know that I've done a video on it, and I wanted to bring it up in the live, which is that I consider one of the core elements of abuse to be that an abuser steals your ability to choose. So that does mean that includes like being controlling. That does include being abusive, harmful, like hurting somebody. But it also includes lying and lying by omission. When you remove a person's ability to make a choice, you're being intrinsically coercive. That's why there are some people who consider it to be rape if someone misrepresents themselves before they have sex, if because if they'd known, I don't know, XYZ, they might not have agreed to do it. So for example, if someone presented themselves as saying, "Oh, I will use birth control," or "I am on birth control," and then they don't, they've stolen your ability to choose. They have prevented your ability to make a decision about something that they've made it clear is important to them. And so in the beginning, before abusers get more access, get more power and control, get more leverage either through money or maybe you've signed a lease together. There's some kind of financial or legal arrangement that ties you to this person or like children. While everything's in that like early stage, you'll often see abusers doing this where they withhold information from you or they will misrepresent things, even if they're not technically lying, so that you will get a specific impression and make the decision that they want you to make. I remember with my abusive ex, he basically said, "Well, if I'd told you, you would have dated me." And it's like, yeah. It's like, I get to make that decision. They don't want you to be able to make those kinds of decisions. They want what they want, and that's the most important thing to them. So, when you are discovering these incidences, and they're going to present it as if it's not a big deal, small potatoes, you should get over it. Instead of acknowledging that it is a significant issue because, again, they've stolen your ability to choose, they've stolen your ability to make a decision. There can be no safety if there is no base element of choice. So, in essence, that is really what love bombing is they are overwhelming you in an emotional way to bypass your logic center, your cognition, your reasoning, so that they can get what they want for you to commit. And then once you're committed, or maybe having sex with them, doing whatever it is, could be giving them your car, giving them money, or maybe they're showering you with their car and with money, trips, going out to eat, something, in an effort to coerce you without your knowledge into doing what they want. They're not respecting you as an individual who has the right and ability to choose for yourself. And so yeah, the love bombing that's really such a big one. Or if they are a critical person and they have criticisms about you that they keep to themselves until you're like 4 months in, or maybe you've moved in finally, it's been a year and you've like moved in, or you've had children, you've binded yourself in a sense to this person where you can't, it's more of a hassle to try and leave than it was before. And then suddenly now they're criticizing. Now they're telling you all the ways that you're wrong. Now they're trying to be outwardly, obviously controlling where before they were covert, now it's overt. And so it's that same pattern. It's just now it's more apparent instead of attempting to finesse your perception, eh, to get you to kind of like hack you and into doing what they want. Now they're coming in with that application of force, and they're standing on like, oh, we're in this relationship, or oh, you said these words, or oh, you told me you love me, and if you really love me, then you would XYZ, or oh, we're partners and therefore you have to do all of this stuff for me. If you don't do these things, you're a bad partner, or you're a bad friend, or you're a bad child. all in an effort to extract something from you that you don't want to give. And anyone who is fine with doing this, huge red flag. We're not a fan. This person's not okay. That said, I will say I'm not one of these people who thinks that victims should never lie to an abuser. That is different. If you are having to keep information to yourself, or if you are having to lie to an abuser, you're doing it to keep yourself safe. You're doing it to keep your children safe. You're not doing it to finesse them into giving you something unreasonable, right? Like it's safety oriented, or you're trying to protect the children, you're trying to protect yourself. These are not the same things. So people get really they get didactic about, oh, this is wrong or that's wrong, stealing is wrong or lying is wrong, cheating is wrong. And I think if someone has stolen your ability to leave them, then the foundation of these concepts shifts, because they've stolen your ability to choose and they've stolen your freedom. They've now, in essence, created a situation where, in order for you to protect yourself or in order for you to leave, you may have to do things that you would normally consider to be, like something that's morally wrong. And so I'm my primary focus. If anyone is following this channel, you're gonna know it's gonna be safety. Like, if you need to lie to an abuser to their face so that they will go to work, so that you can pack up and get the heck out and with your kids, absolutely do it. Um, that is not a lie. That is strategic misdirection for safety purposes. And anyone who wants to nitpick you in that way is somebody who is themselves not a safe person. So safety first, and then that helps you kind of filter these moral concepts, in my opinion. Yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to cover. Ooh, so kind of along the lines of allowing people to have their own free will. I think it's so important, but obviously again with boundaries, with safety. And so it was something that I have noticed with parenting. I grew up sort of the latchkey kid generation where you literally had your house key tied around your neck on a string, and you got off the bus after school, you let yourself in, and then you had to call like your parent at work to be like, I'm alive. I promise I won't, turn on the stove or something. And then you'd tell your parent, okay, I promise I won't answer the door, and we're not here. And then you were sort of just like free and feral for a couple of hours. Like, I'm home from work, so it could be something like 4 to 6 to 8 hours, depending on what kind of job they had. Uh, so there was a lot of free time, unsupervised time. Um, or on the weekends, they might literally tell you to get out of the house and lock you out, and you would have to be outside figuring out something to do till the lights came on. So we went from kind of like that mode of parenting, which I gotta say, I understand how it happened. We are now very hyper vigilant, involved, engaged parents. We give our kids a lot of our time and attention. They have a lot of supervision. They're usually not left on their own unless you count them being on the internet. So you might know exactly where your kid is physically 24/7, but maybe you don't know what they're doing online. Uh, so maybe we find that in between place where we allow kids to have areas of autonomy, areas where they can make choices, areas where they're like lightly unsupervised, to sort of see what they do with that responsibility and freedom. But also, again, oriented on safety. And I noticed I saw like all of these parents with their kids that were so overbearing. They were around all the time. They were constantly lecturing, constantly giving their opinion, basically drowning out their child's inner voice, their ability to process things for themselves by imposing. They're probably accurate, but still, by imposing on the child. And so I'm not saying there's never a time to do that, especially if someone has made a real big oopsie. But I think generally giving kids as much kind of room to breathe, to become their own person is actually a really good thing. And the reason why I thought of that for this live is because I was watching a video on it's this character in the Dune novels. Her name is Alia, Saint Alia of the Knife. And she ends up, she's her mother's pregnant with her when she takes like the spice and she goes through this like ritual. And so it allows the mother to access all of the memories of the past B'nai Gesserit Reverend mothers. And so to kind of like have that background council of people who've lived very full lives and have experienced like a lot of situations, have a lot of wisdom and knowledge. But the guy's point in the video was actually really interesting. And what he said was that because Alia wasn't a person yet, so she's like in the womb. She's it's like an open portal door access whatever. And so she doesn't have a sense of self. She's not coming to this, ritual as an adult with their own identity, with the ability to set boundaries. She's completely open and exposed before she's even gotten to be like a person. And so his video was about why she was the abomination. And the abomination isn't that there's something wrong with her, it's that there was something wrong that happened to her. That she was under this, like, I don't know, psychic stress that no one has ever or should ever go through. And it made me think about overbearing parents, very authoritarian parents, very controlling parents, who don't allow their children like room to even exist as their own person. They don't allow their kids to generate their own identity. And it's not like kids have a static identity. Over the years, you try something and you try something new. You know, but it's more so like giving them room to kind of try new things and experiment, and you pull all of that stuff into your core sense of yourself. And but the overbearing parents, they don't allow you to do this. So they're like the polar opposite, I feel, of the negligent parents. The negligent parents are just like, don't bother me. You know, I'm a grown up doing grown people things. I am not interested in anything that you are going through, nor do I want to talk to you. You swing the pendulum all the way to the other side, and you've got a very over involved parent who is, it's so hard to push back on that, especially when you're a kid, because as a kid, you haven't built your identity yet. You're still becoming a person. So I remember when my son was very little. Let's see. I think he was walking. So he was definitely, I think he was talking to, eh, maybe between like 1.5 to 2.5, where we had rules about things, obviously. Like we don't, oh, what was one of them? Like there are certain toys he wasn't supposed to get into without supervision, or there are certain things he wasn't supposed to do. Um, and I remember there would be times where I knew he was up to something. I knew he was doing something. I could tell what he was doing, but I made the choice to kind of let him do it instead of just coming in and be like, no, you shouldn't do this. This is against the rules. This is against the rules. Because I didn't want him to grow up feeling constantly surveilled, that he doesn't have any privacy. And also, how do you know what kind of choices your kids are going to make unless you allow them space to make those choices? Again, with boundaries, within the bounds of safety. And also, they're so little that the rules they're breaking are not like a super big deal. So I did think it was really cute to see like what he would do. Like he's playing with a ball when he shouldn't be, like in a place maybe he shouldn't be or something like that. It was not, whatever it was not a big deal. But it was still like we had a rule about it. And so, like something would happen because there's a reason you have the rule. And then I'd come in and, okay, well, what did we learn? Let's talk about it. And I purposefully waited because I wanted him to be able to experience the world as a person. And so anyway, when I've talked with victims of abuse over the years, and it doesn't matter if they're a child victim of abuse or they are an adult, if they're in a relationship, like a romantic one, or if it's with their adult parents, or if it's like maybe with a friend, whomever this person is, they're not allowing the victim of abuse to exist, to be a person, to make their own choices, to not be hyper surveilled and hyper controlled. And they justify it to themselves often because they think they're right or that they're entitled, or if you didn't want me to do this, you should have stopped me, or whatever like the reason is for the iteration of abuser that you're dealing with. They're justifying it to themselves. But I like taking it out of the context because it can get confusing. And the idea is that you get to be a person. You get to choose. Maybe sometimes your choices aren't your best choices, but how do we learn? How do we grow? Sometimes we make the choice we probably shouldn't have made, and we go, "Oh no, that was a mistake. Okay, I'll do better next time." And when you let kids do that when they're younger, again, in the bounds of safety, obviously. When you let the kids do that when they're younger, you're allowing them the ability to practice their decision-making process. Versus, like, we've all seen those kids who were so hyper protected by their parents, when they were growing up, and then they go off to college and they become absolute monsters. Like, they are drinking, they are sex with everybody, they are not going to class. They're just they've never had any ability to choose for themselves because their parents were so focused on making sure everything was right, and they didn't realize, like, your job is to help this person become a person. You're supposed to help them practice becoming an adult before they become an adult. So you can't be so controlling and then be shocked when they, in order to differentiate themselves, in order to find their own identity, they go out and do everything that you told them not to. Because oh, hey, hi, baby. Because everything you told them not to do, regardless of whether or not it was correct, you did it in a way that stole their free will. So the underlying core primary need for them is to be able to establish their own identity and their own free will. So anyway, if you're dealing with an abuser and they're coming after you about like all these things you're doing wrong, as as long as there's not really a safety issue, my opinion is you get to do that. You get to make those mistakes. And that doesn't mean that you can't get guidance from someone. Sometimes it's nice to have like a friend of the family that you can go to, or like an outside person from the relationship. You talk to your friends. Or if it's you're having an issue with one friend, then you go outside that friend group to talk to, get some adult supervision on the situation, so that you feel like, okay, I'm getting advice, but I still get to make the decision. So that way it doesn't feel like, and you aren't being controlled. Anyway, anyone who feels so comfortable to make people like run, 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 run. Anyway, so those were the two things that I was watching the video and I was like, I want to talk about that. It was a good video. I probably should credit that guy. Let's see. What is the channel? It is The Understory. Okay. The name of the channel is Understory, and the is at Into the Understory, and I guess he does like science fiction stuff, which I do love. Dune is actually one of my favorite stories. And the reason why Dune is actually one of my favorite stories is because obviously the strategery of it all, but because it really drills down into like, what does knowing the future actually mean? How does that actually help anybody? And also, could knowing the future be controlling, especially depending on like how you convey that information to other people? So if we want to like go to something that makes sense, in an interpersonal relationship. Okay, let's say you have two kiddos in high school, they're in love, they're dating, and now the older one is about to go off to college, and the other one is like now going into their senior year of high school. Okay, well, I'm not saying it's uh Quizat what is it? Quizat Haderach levels of premonition or knowing the future. But, we pretty much know how that story goes. Generally speaking, the person who goes off, it becomes the beginning of the end, basically, even though it's very painful, and people want to hold on. However, if you come in to your child and you say, "Hey, yeah, this isn't going to work out," doesn't if they accept what you say, then it feels like they don't get to make a real choice. They don't get to discover that on their own. However, if they find out on their own that this often doesn't work out and then they make a decision about it, um, then they're able to determine, oh, I guess this doesn't really work out. So either I'm going to make this choice or I'll make it another choice, but I'll understand how things happened. But if you're coming in and you're like, I'm going to tell you the future, this is not going to work out, you still have people's ability to choose. You still have people's ability to live their lives. And so I feel like if someone did have this ability to be able to tell the future or tell the likelihood of the future, that you'd have to use it very, very carefully. Probably mostly in broad strokes. I'm not saying never for the individual things, but again, you want to preserve someone's ability to choose. And also, a lot of the time, the mistakes that we make become part of this story of our narrative of who we are and our experience in this world. Um, and so sometimes you end up looking back fondly on the mistakes that you've made. Like, "Oh, okay, well, that was my best choice, but what a story, what a experience, what a thing that I learned that I now incorporated into my sense of myself, and now I'm moving on into my future, hopefully wiser." You know, mostly thinking we won't do this again. Yeah, we're learning, we're growing. Um, okay, let me check out my notes on what else. Oh, I wrote down the number one decision we make in this life is who we choose. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I want to talk about that right now, though. Okay. Oh, okay. I came across this concept in like a video somebody did, and I love it. I will preface it by saying that this particular person put it in context of like religious stuff, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pass along the vibe of it without including that. But it talks about how a soulmate isn't to complete your emptiness. A soulmate is someone who reflects your wholeness. Now, I've talked about soulmates a lot on the channel and on the subreddit. And basically, I do not think that soulmates are this fate thing that is destined, that you are destined for. I think it is a choice that you make to be the mate of somebody's soul, to want what's best for them, and to make those decisions, toward each other each day. Um, so if each person is oriented toward the other and choosing what is best for them, not just one person, both people, that you end up becoming the mate of each other's souls because you are being the mate of each other's souls. But I did love this concept of that the person that is your partner, a genuine partner, isn't someone who fills the emptiness or completes you or anything like that. That those narratives are so toxic, and I feel so badly how often they are in like young adult literature, movies, media. Oh my gosh, like I kind of wish I could press delete on that, but the idea of like it being someone who reflects back your wholeness, what a much more beautiful, more subtle way to conceive of like how this could operate or should operate. I'm not well, I don't know if I'd say should, but if there was gonna be a soulmate situation, more like that, less like you're destined, you're fated. Uh that's we don't like that because that removes the element of choice and free will. We want to be able to choose. And in fact, in spiritual traditions, if you, theoretically speaking, got an indication of like, oh, this person, you know, maybe the direction that you end up going, you would still have the ability to choose or not choose that. Again, it's not fated. You don't have to. You are not stuck. Nobody's twin flames. I'm not a fan of that. And actually, I don't know how many. I don't know that a lot of abuse resources cover the twin flame stuff, and I understand why, because it's bonkers, crazy, bananas stuff where people end up in some like a kind of psychosis where they see themselves as two halves of the same soul. So already I'm not a fan because we are each an individual person. We are each an individual, we have an individual soul. It is not broken into. Um, Whereas the idea I like better is like two people moving together in the same direction, like the pulling the cart together. Many hands make light work. But they end up like talking about quantum entanglement, and you have to like focus on yourself so that the person will be attracted. Like it's guys, it's very involved. It's very more into the law of attraction type of thing, and it legit bonkers, makes people crazy. It should come with a warning. Anyway, okay. So I think there was one more thing I wanted to touch base on. I had saved it in my I have like playlists, and one of them is subreddit, but I'm in it for the channel. Okay, that's Nazis. No, we're not going to talk about that today. I have a lot saved. Holy moly. There's a lot of videos. Oh, actually, this is I literally came across this the day after the fight or flight. Okay, I've got to learn how to share a screen. All right, I'm gonna be weird and show this video off my phone. Whatever, it's fine, guys. It's just us. So basically, there's research that says that the fight or flight mechanism is actually within, like, starts within our bones. I know this sounds crazy. Let me pull up this lady. Okay.
Bones for centuries. Turns out we had no idea
How do I do this?
right we were. You know that feeling when you're about to give a big presentation or something genuinely terrifying happens
How do I
and
do
suddenly
this?
your heart starts racing, your breathing changes, and your whole body feels like it's been plugged into a wall socket? We call that fight or flight. And we've always been taught that it works like this. The brain senses danger, the brain signals to the adrenal glands, then the adrenal glands flood your body with adrenaline and cortisol, and off you go. Well understood, settled science. Except apparently we missed something that's been involved in this process the entire time. And it is genuinely the last thing you'd expect: your skeleton. The moment your brain registers danger, it doesn't just signal your heart and muscles, it signals your bones. And within minutes, not hours, minutes, your bones start releasing a hormone called osteocalcin directly into your bloodstream. Osteocalcin then quickly preps your muscles to either run or fight. I want to go back to the minutes thing because that is really fast. Traditional stress hormones like cortisol can take hours to reach peak levels. For a long time, scientists struggle to fully explain how the body switches into survival mode as fast as it does during fight or flight.
Anyway, that was insane to me. I had no idea. I'd never heard of osteocalcin. And also there's apparently also new research that says that our ovaries have like neural network or connects to our neural system. And it's the same channel. It's at TIL Science. So yeah, so there's more to the fight or flight response, and it involves our bones, and that's crazy bonkers. Okay, what if we like them, Gwen Stefani? Absolutely. How is it going? It's so good to see you. Yeah, so I never cease to be amazed about all the things that we learned that are new. And to the ovary fallopian tube thing. So a whole lot of people in the comment section were like, "Oh my gosh, this explains PCOS and all of these conditions and the level of pain that women experience." Let's say with like a ovarian torsion or with a cyst or something like that. And somebody was trying to link it to possibly autoimmune disorders, but that's outside of my bailiwick. I was just like, "Oh, that sounds crazy," and something to look into. But yeah, the channel that did both of those videos was at TIL science, like today I learned science. So yeah, that was, I don't know why YouTube decided I should start watching that lady, but thank you, because that was very helpful information. All right. I wanted to do, think I wanted to do a thing from, oh, that's right. That's right. I wanted to do another thing on Pete Walker because he came up with something called the Human Bill of Rights. And I was like, oh my gosh, we should read this. Speaking of, having autonomy and free will. Okay. So the Human Bill of Rights from Pete Walker, he says, Human Bill of Rights, guidelines for fairness and intimacy. I have the right to be treated with respect. I have the right to say no. I have the right to make mistakes. I have the right to reject unsolicited advice or feedback. I have the right to negotiate for change. I have the right to change my mind or my plans. I have a right to change my circumstances or course of action. I have the right to have my own feelings, beliefs, opinions, preferences, etc. I have the right to protest sarcasm, destructive criticism, or unfair treatment. I have a right to feel angry and to express it non abusively. I have a right to take responsibility. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I have a right to refuse to take responsibility for anyone else's problems. I have a right to refuse to take responsibility for anyone's bad behavior. I have a right to feel ambivalent and to occasionally be inconsistent. Yes, we're human beings, like we're not robots. I have a right to play, waste time, and not always be productive. I have a right to occasionally be childlike and immature. I have a right to complain about life's unfairness and injustices. I have a right to occasionally be irrational in safe ways. I have a right to seek healthy and mutually supportive relationships. I have a right to ask friends for a modicum of help and emotional support. I have a right to complain and verbally ventilate in moderation. I have a right to grow, evolve, and prosper. Like I love, pretty sure those are inalienable rights within the Constitution. um, Yeah, so obviously I've said a lot of these things, on the channel, but if I had to add something to his amazing Bill of Rights, it would be I have the right to eat food. And it's going to sound weird, but I think this is one of the signs of honey. This is one of the signs of abuse that I don't usually see make it on a list. But abusers are often weirdly controlling about food, or sometimes they will eat all of the food, and then so especially if you're like pregnant and you're going, wait, I had this food that I was going to eat and it's gone now. Or if you're a child and your parent for some reason isn't buying enough food, or trying to starve you because they think that you weigh too much. So food becomes this nexus of abuse. And I think, you know, it's hard to spot sometimes because the person who ate the food is usually like, well, you weren't going to eat it, so I ate it, or they feel entitled to it for some reason. Or they might say like, oh, well, I worked out and I need more calories than you. And the thing is, like, I think a human right on the Human Bill of Rights, I'm sure he would agree, is that you get to have food. You get to have the nutrition you need. You get to, eat the food that is yours. And so that someone who comes into your space and eats all of your food is not a safe person, regardless of whatever reason it is that they give you. Okay. Well, of course, right now I have one of my kitties that's trying to tell me they want food. Guys, why? Why right now? Um, so yeah, the food thing. And it's so interesting because when I've seen victims talk about the food thing, it's usually in retrospect. It's not typically the food thing that makes them realize they were in an abuse dynamic, but realizing they were in the abuse dynamic is what makes them go, wait a minute, you know what? And they ate my food all the time. And I wasn't allowed to. Honey, what? Okay. Do you want to come up or no? What's happening? I don't understand why. Why right now? So anyway, that's sort of what I wanted to talk about. Unless anybody else has anything they'd like to, like, questions or things that they want to mention, or oh, somebody mentioned the Trolls movie. Libby, girl, it was Libby, and she said that there were these two trolls that were basically, one was very overly optimistic and one was overly pessimistic, and or one was naive. I'm not sure. I need to like look into that. But the opposites attract trope, I don't know that I'm I don't know that I'm a fan. I think it certainly can establish chemistry, but you'd have to have like a lot of respect for the other person to make that work. So I'm not going to say never, but I would be you can come up. You can come up. Do you want to come join? Do you want to come join? Oh my goodness. Come on. Okay. All right. This is Kiwi. My son named our cats, and so one is named Mikasa after one of the Attack on Titan characters, and then Kiwi. I don't know where he came from. This name. Okay, my love. Okay. Well, I think unless anyone has any questions or things they want to talk about, um, we might end it here. I don't know why. Well, I'm assuming it's food. I'm assuming he was like, "You're talking about food, and I have the inalienable right to be fed." So here we are. Anyway, um, y'all have a great weekend, and I will talk to you next time, honey. Yeah.